Imagine it's July 1777. You're standing on a hot, dusty street in Boston, and suddenly this crowd of like 100 well-dressed women marches down the road.
Right.
They completely surround this wealthy merchant, grab him by the neck, throw him into the back of a wooden cart, and just physically confiscate his warehouse keys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and all while this massive crowd of men just stands by in stunned, absolute silence. I mean, this isn't a riot. This is consumer protection, 18th century style. So welcome to another deep dive.
It is quite the image to start with. We usually think of the home front during this era as this place of, quiet waiting, but the reality was intensely physical and honestly deeply strategic.
Exactly. Today, we are on a mission for you, the ever-curious learner. Because you've probably heard the traditional stories 1,000 times, right?
Well,
The Founding Fathers drafting declarations, or Betsy Ross quietly knitting a flag in the parlor.
yeah, the classic myths.
Right, but we have this massive stack of personal correspondence from the Revolutionary War era sitting in front of us. And we're looking directly into the homes, the markets, and the minds of the era to answer a very specific question. What was the actual role of women during the American Revolution?
And, the sources we're using to explore this, they completely rewrite that passive narrative. We are drawing from a collection of really intimate letters and poems from figures like Abigail Adams, Mercy Otis Warren, Phillis Wheatley, Sarah Bash, Esther Reed, and Martha Jefferson.
Yeah.
And what is crucial here is that they are corresponding directly with figures like George Washington, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because these letters prove these women weren't just, waiting by the window while the men fought. They were political strategists, they were economic enforcers, and they were the literal financial backbone of the war.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into the material, I think we need a quick note for you listening.
Yes, this is really important. These letters dive into some highly charged political and social issues that were relevant to the era. For example, in these sources, Abigail Adams expresses some very strong anti-slavery sentiments regarding a 1774 petition by enslaved people.
Right.
And she makes these early feminist demands to, remember the ladies. So to be completely explicit, as your guides today, we are not taking any political sides or endorsing the viewpoints of this content.
Exactly, yeah.
Our mission is simply to convey the ideas exactly as they are contained in the original source material, just impartially, so you can see the raw history for yourself.
You're just opening the archives for you.
Yeah.
And to really understand the impact these women had, we first have to look at how they shaped the very ideas of the revolution. Because, it's one thing to fight a war, it's another to figure out what exactly you're fighting for.
That is the perfect place to start. How did these women act as ideological sounding boards, basically cultural architects for a brand new nation? Let's look at the correspondence between Mercy Otis Warren and John Adams around early 1776. Okay, John Adams actually writes to Warren, explicitly asking for her opinion on whether America should be a monarchy or a republic.
Wait, hold on. John Adams is crowdsourcing the foundational form of the American government from her.
He absolutely is. He values her intellect that much. In his letter, Adams admits that a monarchy would probably make him personally very rich and powerful.
Sure.
But he worries it would just produce a society obsessed with, quote, cards and backgammon and, frivolity. He is genuinely terrified of American venality.
Venality, as in people just selling out to the highest bidder.
Precisely. Venality is the prostitution of public office for private gain. Adams feared that without a king-keeping order, Americans would just become completely corrupt and selfish.
Wow.
He needed someone to convince him that a republic could actually work. So Warren replies with this highly intellectual, philosophical defense of a republic. She writes that she fears the, quote, pompous glare of regal pageantry associated with kings. Instead, she argues that a republic, while risky, is the only system that produces heroic virtues in human nature.
So she is literally laying the philosophical bricks for him. Like she's giving him the courage to abandon the monarchy.
She is. They are debating the philosophical foundation of the country before the Declaration of Independence is even signed. Her intellectual weight is so universally recognized that years later, Thomas Jefferson himself writes to thank her for her published history of the American Revolution.
That is just incredible. But it wasn't just the political philosophy they were building, right? It was the actual brand of the new nation.
Yeah.
Look at Phillis Wheatley. In October 1775, she writes a poem to George Washington. And if you think about it, Washington is leading a treasonous rebellion. He needs legitimacy.
Definitely.
And Wheatley completely shapes the mythological brand of the nation to provide that legitimacy.
Yeah.
She describes America as this divine goddess named Columbia, with olive and laurel in her golden hair. She literally writes about Americans as a heaven-defended race.
What's fascinating here is Washington's reaction. I mean, he is the commander-in-chief, right? He's drowning in the logistics of war. Yet he replies to Wheatley a few months later with this deep respect.
Right, yeah.
He apologizes for the delay in writing back and explicitly acknowledges her, quote, great poetical talents. He even mentions that he wanted to publish her poem in the public prints to share her genius, but he held back.
Wait, why did he hold back? Was it, because she was a Black woman?
Actually, in his letter, he says he didn't publish it because he didn't want to incur the imputation of vanity, because the poem praised him so highly.
Oh, I see.
He was worried people would think he was just printing his own propaganda, but his respect for her cultural creation was absolute.
It's like Phillis Wheatley and Otis Warren are these modern-day brand architects and high-level political consultants.
Yes.
They don't hold the official titles. They don't have the corner office in the Continental Congress, but they are absolutely writing the scripts that the politicians are reading from.
And that influence extended into the legal framework, too. We see Abigail Adams trying to shape the legal future in her famous March 1776 letter, where she tells John to remember the ladies in the new code of laws.
Oh, right. The famous line.
Yeah, and she goes as far as threatening to foment a rebellion if women aren't given a voice and representation. And she had already applied this rigorous rights-based logic earlier in 1774 to the institution of slavery.
Really?
Yeah, she wrote that it was deeply hypocritical, her word is iniquitous, to, quote, fight ourselves for what we are daily robbing and plundering from those who have as good a right to freedom.
Wow. So she is pointing out the glaring logical flaws in their grand philosophy. How does John Adams respond to her legal demands for women to be included in the new government?
His response is quite revealing. He essentially laughs it off. He claims that in practice, men are just the subjects.
What?
Yeah, he writes that men only have the name of masters, and that yielding to her legal demands would officially subject men to the despotism of the petticoat.
Okay, here's what I have to ask. Is John Adams actually dismissing her, or is this, like, a nervous joke?
Oh, it's definitely.
Like, is he using humor because he recognizes she's making a bulletproof legal point that he is completely unprepared to deal with?
It's heavily weighted toward the latter. If you read the tone of Adams's letters, he often uses deflection when he's cornered intellectually. He knows that if the premise of the revolution is that all arbitrary power must be overthrown, well, her logic is flawless.
Yeah, dude.
By calling it the despotism of the petticoat, he's acknowledging the immense informal power women already wielded over the men in their lives, and he's honestly terrified of making that power legally formal.
It's one thing to philosophically design a republic on paper or debate legal rights in a letter. But eventually, a republic collapses if its citizens starve.
Yes, exactly.
That philosophical ideal has to crash directly into the reality of a broken economy.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the transition from ideological architects to economic enforcers is where the rubber really meets the road. Surviving the wartime economy on the home front was a brutal daily grind.
Right.
The Continental Congress was printing paper money to fund the war, which led to catastrophic hyperinflation.
Right. The phrase, not worth a continental. Abigail Adams's letters from 1775 outline this extreme frugality. The market is completely collapsing around her. She's writing to John, literally begging him to somehow find and send her a single pound of pepper.
Just a pound of pepper.
Yeah, she writes that not one pin is to be purchased for love nor money.
The scarcity was crippling. With the men gone, women were left to manage the properties, run the farms, and navigate this completely unstable market where the paper money in your pocket lost value by the hour.
It's terrifying.
And when the market failed them, they didn't just sit by and starve. They took matters into their own hands to literally enforce fair practices.
Which brings us back to that incredible scene in Boston in July 1777. I love this account from Abigail. Tell me exactly what happened with this new set of mobility, as she called it.
Well, there was an affluent merchant named Thomas Boylston. He was a bachelor, and he was hoarding a massive hogshead of coffee.
Okay.
Now, a hogshead isn't just a barrel. It's a massive wooden cask that could hold hundreds of pounds of goods. Coffee was a vital commodity, and the local committee had set fair price rules to prevent price gouging during the shortage. But Boylston refused to sell it under those rules. He was holding out for massive profits.
So the market completely fails. The local government isn't doing anything. What do the women do?
100 women marched down to his warehouse with a cart and trucks. And it's crucial to note a detail from a letter by a local selectman, John Scaley. He pointed out that these weren't rowdy vagrants, they were, quote, reputable, clean-dressed women. This was the middle and upper class of Boston society, deciding the social contract was completely broken.
And they demand the keys to the warehouse. When Boylston refuses, one of the women literally grabs him by the neck, tosses him into the cart, and takes his keys.
Yeah.
Then they tip the cart to dump him out, open the warehouse, and distribute the coffee themselves based on what they deemed was a fair price.
Exactly. It's a striking image of economic enforcement.
It's like modern aggressive consumer protection or antitrust enforcement. They didn't wait for a regulatory agency to find the monopoly. They just put the monopolist in a cart and redistributed the goods.
Pretty much.
But they didn't just have to battle local merchants. Sometimes they had to battle the sheer ignorance of their own families who didn't understand the economic reality on the ground.
That is painfully true. Just look at the exchange between Sarah Bash and her father, Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, this exchange is so rough to read. Franklin is over in Paris serving as a diplomat, right?
Yes. In 1779, Sarah writes to him asking if he could send some black pins and feathers from France so she can look decent at social events in Philadelphia.
Seems reasonable.
Well, Franklin brutally reprimands her. He writes back telling her that idleness is the dearest thing, suggests she can just get feathers from every cock's tail in America, and complains that she isn't spending her time spinning flax like a good Republican woman.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I mean, isn't Franklin being incredibly out of touch here? He's dining in Parisian palaces, lecturing his daughter on Republican simplicity.
He is completely missing the reality of her situation. He's viewing her request through a lens of abstract moral philosophy. He honestly thinks asking for French fashion is a sign of moral decay.
And Sarah fires back in September 1779, and she absolutely brings the receipts. She details her intense, grueling labor. She tells him she iced spinning wool for winter stockings.
Right.
But she explains the actual mechanics of the ruined economy. She's dealing with impossible weavers who refuse to take paper money. They demand hard money, silver or gold, which she obviously doesn't have. And because of that, they keep her goods hostage for over a year.
The logistics of just clothing a family had become an absolute nightmare.
Right. She tells him she's surviving a winter where a single yard of common gauze costs $50 because the paper currency has completely depreciated. She writes that she thinks it would be a sin to buy it, even if she had millions.
Wow.
She wasn't being frivolous asking for pins. She was trying to maintain a single shred of normalcy in an economic disaster zone.
What's fascinating here is that through this struggle, these women weren't just passively surviving the economy, they were actively organizing it. They were learning, through trial and error, how to mobilize resources, enforce pricing, and manage broken supply chains under extreme duress.
And that right there is the crucial pivot. Because that grassroots organizational skill honed by fighting merchants and surviving hyperinflation soon scaled up. When the Continental Army was starving and running out of supplies, these women stepped in to directly fund the military itself.
We see this incredible mobilization clearly in the summer of 1780. The war effort is going terribly, Charleston has fallen, the troops are starving, and mutiny is a constant threat. Esther de Burt Reed writes to George Washington on July 4th. The women of Philadelphia have organized a massive subscription. They canvassed the city house by house, and they raised an astonishing amount, over $300,000 in paper money, plus over 600 pounds in hard specie.
That number is staggering for 1780. How do you even organize that without modern communication? They don't have group chats, they have horses and quill pens.
It required a highly sophisticated network, and it wasn't an isolated incident. Martha Jefferson writes a letter in August 1780 to Eleanor Madison showing that she is actively organizing the women of Virginia to match the Pennsylvania ladies' efforts.
Oh, wow.
They are writing to the wives of governors and prominent leaders across the colonies, creating a massive interstate colonial network to coordinate fundraising.
So they pull together this massive war chest, but then they hit a major logistical standoff with the commander-in-chief. What happens when Esther Reed tries to actually give this money to the army?
Esther Reed writes to Washington with a very specific plan. She wants to convert the massive pile of paper money into hard dollars, into actual gold and silver coin.
Okay.
And she wants to hand $2 directly to every single soldier. She explicitly views it as a reward for their past suffering and an incitement to future duty. She tells Washington that the soldiers won't be gratified by an article of clothing that they are technically already entitled to receive from the government anyway. She wants to give them dignity.
But Washington strictly vetoes this plan. Why?
Washington replies that giving soldiers hard cash will directly lead to irregularities and disorders.
Meaning they're going to take that hard silver straight to the tavern.
Exactly. He is managing an army that is perpetually on the brink of mutiny over lack of pay and horrific conditions. He insists that the money must be used to buy linen to make shirts for the troops.
Right.
He argues that a shirt will do far more to preserve their health and keep the army functioning than a couple of coins.
Okay, I have to challenge Washington's micromanagement here. Weren't the women actually right? I mean, a cash bonus, actual hard specie clinking in their pockets when they hadn't been paid in months, might have done way more for their psychological morale than a shirt.
You're touching on the fundamental difference in how they viewed the problem. Washington's perspective is deeply pragmatic and top-down. He is focused on basic survival, maintaining discipline, and preventing desertion.
It feels exactly like a modern corporate standoff. You have this philanthropic foundation, the women, wanting to give unrestricted cash grants. They trust the recipients. They want to boost morale and give them autonomy.
Right.
And then you have this strict CEO, Washington, demanding the funds be entirely restricted to uniform supplies because he needs to control the supply chain, and he doesn't trust his frontline workers not to blow the cash.
That is a perfect analogy. The tension is between psychological dignity and operational control. But what is remarkable is how Esther Reed responds. She pushes back initially, but ultimately she gracefully pivots. Yeah, she writes back that the ladies didn't have the most distant wish to go against his opinion. She takes the funds, buys the linen, and the women get to work personally sewing thousands of shirts themselves.
Which just proves their ultimate adaptability. They raised a fortune, tried to disperse it their way, hit a brick wall with the commander-in-chief, and instead of taking their ball and going home, they immediately pivoted to manufacturing the shirts themselves to keep the army from freezing.
And their labor was recognized at the highest levels. Washington later writes to Sarah Bosch, who helped carry on the work after Esther Reed suddenly passed away.
Okay.
He praises the patriotic exertions of the ladies, explicitly acknowledging that the Army survived a critical and severe season because of what they provided.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why does this stack of letters matter today?
I think for anyone trying to understand this era, this deep dive is the ultimate aha moment. It completely shatters the passive myth of revolutionary women.
It really does. You realize that the American Revolution wasn't just fought by men with muskets. It was philosophically defined, economically stabilized, and literally funded by women operating entirely outside the official halls of power.
It certainly reframes the narrative from top to bottom. And, it leaves us with a final lingering question to ponder as we close. We saw earlier that John Adams secretly believed men were the true subjects to the informal power of women, fearing what he called the despotism of the petticoat.
Right, he was really worried about their influence.
If that was the case, considering everything we've just discussed, the way they shaped political philosophy, enforced market prices with physical force, and organized massive interstate financial networks, is it possible that the Founding Fathers intentionally excluded women from the new legal code because they were terrified of the massive political and economic organizing power these women had just demonstrated during the war?
Wow. Now that is a thought to chew on. They didn't ignore women in the Constitution because they thought they were weak or incapable. They actively excluded them because they knew exactly how devastatingly effective and strong they were.
Precisely. The evidence of their capability wasn't just a theory. It was the very reason the Continental Army survived to win the war.
The history books might like to keep things neat and tidy, focusing on the dates and the generals. But when you look at these letters, you see the muscle, the tissue, the actual lifeblood that kept the whole body of the revolution moving. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning those clean lines and traditional narratives.